And I started realising the reality of, we had the mindset of we'd be grateful if we lived till we were 16. Then we'd be grateful if we made it to 18. We'd be grateful if we made it to 21. I'm 24 and I'm sitting here. I never thought I'd be alive.
Okay, guys, so welcome to Undefeated podcast with me, Chardonnay. Today I'm joined with a special guest, Pembe Tokluhan, a stage manager, studio engineer and DJ and just overall badass woman. So, hi, welcome.
Welcome, thank you. I'm saying welcome, but welcome to me.
Welcome to you.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for being here. There's so much I want to talk to you about today, but first let's start off with the beginning, and that's into your childhood. So tell me about your upbringing and just, the start of life for you.
Oh, wow. I mean, we can be here for days talking about my upbringing, weeks even. I think, so for me, I'm born and raised in Hackney.
Okay.
Always been a Hackney girl. Came out of it for a little bit. Always dragged me back, so I'm back in Hackney. I would say that I had a bit of a difficult childhood, infused with a lot of childhood adversities and traumas.
Right.
And coming from an environment that was infused with a lot of poverty and limited kind of mindset as well.
Right.
Coming from immigrant parents that came to the UK.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a typical kind of, I'd say, a young person that grew up in a council estate. A lot, even though everyone's life is very unique and individual to themselves, that was kind of me. So I was out at the youth club all the time. And my family in some ways was my community and the community that I'd grown up in.
Right. As a child, was you aware of your situation? Because I know as children sometimes we can be blind to a lot of things. So was you aware of the circumstances you were in, or that did you have friends that were different, or was it just this is normal to me until you maybe got older and then stepped out of that environment and realised actually my childhood was quite different? What was that like?
I think that in some ways it was similar in the sense that there was a lot of young people that their parents were off working and then they were out in the estate or in the youth club or in the adventure playground, just kind of out and about. I think I could definitely, as I was getting older, see the difference in, for example, clothing, the different types of clothing that people would wear.
Right.
And, I think that definitely swayed me towards wanting to go and have that glamorous clothing and that lifestyle to an extent, because you don't really want to be the young person that comes into school with the Wallaby shoes on. You want kickers. You do. You want kickers. Everyone's got kickers, and you want a decent jacket that doesn't wet up when the rain's coming through you, and wetting up your whole school uniform. So I think as I got older, it became more apparent. But when I was younger, I was kind of almost oblivious to it. We just always knew that there was richer people than us.
Right.
And potentially poorer people than us as well.
Okay, yeah.
But that we were well off enough to know that we had a roof over our head and something to eat. Right. And that was decent.
Cool. So then as you got older, was there any things you had to face in a sense of, was there any bad influences around you that maybe led you down a certain path or anything like that?
I'd say there was influences. I don't know if I'd use the word bad, which some people might use that word, but I'd say there were just influences and older peers within the area and the community that we all looked up to or wanted to be similar to them. So I was quite involved in selling drugs and the kind of gang lifestyle from about 11, 12 years old.
Right.
And that was just something that was very normal to me, because a lot of those gang members or people were people that I'd just grown up with.
Even at such a young age as well, 12, that's quite young.
Yeah, so I mean the youth clubs, you're allowed in youth clubs from 12, 13.
Yeah, it's true.
So 12 is say year 7, year 8, 11, 12. You're in year 7, year 8 ages. When you're growing up in the community, you're going to the youth club. The youth club is open to 12, 13-year-olds, but it's also open to 18, 19-year-olds. So, it is in some ways it's got to be managed better with the way the younger people engage with the older people within those spaces. Because I think that when you're around a lot of older people, you do tend to want to grow up faster.
Absolutely.
And you do tend to want to have the stuff they have and do the stuff that they do. So I was kind of involved from 11, 12 years old and then continued within that lifestyle. And as a consequence of that, by the time I was 14 years old, I was imprisoned. So I became definitely a product of my environment and where I was growing up.
Do you blame solely the environment? Like maybe if you had a different change of where you grew up, do you think things would have been different? Or it was just like you said, product of your environment?
Environment, I think whether you're in North East, South West London, if you're growing up with a certain level of poverty, with a certain level of this isn't your country mindset of growing up, then I think that unfortunately you do end up more than likely coming into this vicious cycle. I think if my class was different, that might have affected me.
Right.
And I think if I was just a white girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, the world would have been in my favour. You know, having a more British name.
Right.
You know, for a long time, my name, I used to say to people, hi, I'm Pembe. My name's not Pembe. My name's Pembe.
Right.
And it's with an E.
Right.
And I emphasise on that now. So, yeah.
Cool. You mentioned earlier selling drugs. Now, how did that, did anyone know you were selling drugs, like family and friends wise? And if they did, like, how was they reacting to it? How did they feel about it?
Family wise, not necessarily, no. I think they knew that I was out there being bad and naughty, but they didn't know what I was necessarily doing. So I was like buying tracksuits for myself and leaving it at my friend's house. And my mum knew, like, if you even come home with a different colour hairband, like, she knew she didn't buy that hairband.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, she didn't buy me this hairband and she knows that and I'm going to get clocked. So my family didn't as such until I started getting arrested and little things like that.
Right.
But my friends, it was very strange because my female friendship group from my area, they were all really good in education. They all got on with their lives. They never got involved in that stuff. They never smoked. And I kept that separate from them in some ways. But then when it came to my boys, because the boys were doing the boy stuff, I was like the boy of the group, you know, like with the girls. So I just stuck with them. And then they were also quite involved or knew of it. So to us, it wasn't a bad... we didn't look at it like it was a bad thing. We didn't even look at it like we were doing something wrong. We just looked at it like, this is the only way we've seen people in our community make money. You can't be what you can't see. I'm only becoming what I'm seeing. So that's the mentality that I kind of had.
Did the penny ever drop for you that this is bad, or do you still think at the time I was just doing what was kind of shown to me?
I didn't think that it was bad at the time. I mean, it was bad in the sense of it was a wrong thing that we're doing, but tax evasion is wrong as well, you know?
Yeah.
And actually, that's what we knew. If we was taught to make really nice cups of coffees and teas and stand there and be a barista, we would be a barista.
Yeah.
You know, so in that time, no. To me, it was like, actually, everything's about supply and demand. That was a demand. There was a form of group or people that needed to supply it. It's like any service. I looked at it like business.
Yeah.
That's why, to me, it in some ways teaches you to be business-minded.
Yeah.
You know?
It does, doesn't
I think as I got older and I started realising the reality of, you know, we had the mindset of we'd be grateful if we lived till we were 16. Then we'd be grateful if we made it to 18. We'd be grateful if we made it to 21. I'm 24 and I'm sitting here. I never thought I'd be alive.
Really?
So I think as we got older, it just started becoming more real that people are going to die. People are going to go prison. You know, it's not necessarily something that is a good look, and you don't want to really have that as your lifestyle moving forward as an adult.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've touched on it as well. You did go to prison. How long did you go for?
It was about 10, 11 months.
How was it?
I think it was maybe just under 11 months.
Just under 11 months. So not a year quite.
Not a year quite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was it? What was it like?
Oh, Boy, what was it like? I mean, I was 14 to begin with.
Wow.
So I was
Do you
quite
get put in a
young.
different prison when you're...
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So when you're... So the legal age of responsibility in the United Kingdom is 10.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay.
And that was because of the two brothers that took the young baby onto the train tracks out of the shopping mall. We were all probably quite young then, but that's basically when the law changed. So the legal age of responsibility is 10, and you can be incarcerated. They usually have youth detention centres or children secure homes. That's what they're usually called. So they are a little bit different to your typical prison or what you've seen on Top Boy or whatever, you know. We don't have like, I don't know how to explain it. It's not like halls with loads of cells in it and you go up the stairs and there's balconies. It's not like that. You know, I'm not going to overplay something that it is. It's not. The reality is you're still in a cell, but your cell is very different to the type of cell that you'd find in an adult prison. You don't have to share cells because you're a minor.
Okay.
So you shouldn't be sharing cells. I don't know. I can explain what my one was like. I mean, we had like this massive wooden metal door that literally when you pulled the handle up, it locked in every angle. And then we had like a shower where when you clicked it, it would only last like 10 seconds or 20 seconds, but it was freezing cold.
Right.
So that was like how the shower setup was. And then the floor was like carpet, really crap, cheap carpet. And they had like this, how can I explain it? Like this marble risen bit within the cell where you had this thick blue mattress that was like that, and it was just thick. And that was it. So you had that with a blue chair, and that was the only thing you was allowed in there.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And then you was allowed a couple of your clothes, but then if they deemed that they were
so they allow you your clothes, they don't put you in the typical like
no
suit, orange jumpsuit or anything like that. It's completely different.
You have clothes,
Okay.
you have education. If you choose to opt to education, it's a bit like normal prison though. You got education and AQAs and stuff in prison as well. So you got education. If you refuse to attend education, then you have to stay in your cell for the whole day.
Oh, wow.
You're not allowed out whilst everyone's in education. It was a weird experience. Like, it definitely isn't a place for young people to be. That's what I would say. Like, it really, really isn't a healthy place for young people to be. You get exposed to a lot of traumatic encounters and interactions with people that are young, that genuinely just really need some more support than just being shoved in there.
Okay. So you think more beneficial would have been, instead of just locking people away and saying you've done something wrong, maybe, I don't know, like a support system, like a guidance, like therapy or something? Do you think that would have been more beneficial for some people? Not everyone, but...
For some people, yeah. I think especially with young people, like, if a young person is acting in a certain way, I think it needs to be looked into more rather than labelling them as bad.
Right.
You know, I think when you're so used to being picked on by the teacher and you're so used to being the kid that always gets excluded or always gets in trouble, you just live your life feeling like that. But actually, the reality is a lot of those people that are branded as bad are kids that are abused, kids that go through horrific trauma, live with parents who are, you know, crackheads and criminals, and like genuinely kids and young people that are going through so much trauma and adversities that the world's almost against them from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's like, if them people don't support them and give them a bit of a chance, then you know, they end up in this vicious cycle of having criminal records and getting imprisoned and going back to prison. And I mean, like, for anyone that's listening, like, they should look into ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and the actual statistics on how much it affects people going through adversity, and then what it turns you into. You're like 12 times more likely to be a heroin and crack addict. You're 10 times more likely to be have a criminal conviction.
Right.
There's a lot of correlations between adversities and trauma in childhood and the impact that it has on people as they grow up. So, like, one example I'll give you is a person that's neglected versus a person that's not neglected develops half the brain capacity. That's a scientific fact.
I didn't know that.
So if you're a 30-year-old man, there's a reason why all these 30-year-old men are acting like they're 15-year-old boys. It's because they've never had love. They've never had nurturing. They've never had care. So how can you give love, care and nurturing to people when you've never received that?
It, right, yeah. It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I think really good advice, actually. What was that thing you said as well? People should look at the...
Adverse childhood experiences, known as ACEs.
ACEs. Okay, I think that's very good for people out there watching. Day to day in prison, what was it like? I mean, you explained, you know, you could have an education or not, but on your mental being, how did that affect your mentality? Did you feel like, you know, you had more struggles some days than others? Did you think it affected your behaviour? Did you notice yourself maybe turning more inwards? Or was you, like, what was your mentality like? How was it affected?
I mean, I kind of went in, and the first day I, like, had this thought that you have to be the baddest person in there or you're going to become someone else's.
Is that true? Because a lot of people, you know. Is
I
that true?
I don't swear on this podcast. But,
No, don't do that.
Yeah, it is to some extent. Yeah, I mean, it's like in a school. You know, if you're gonna allow people to push you over, they'll push you over.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of need to go in there and make it clear that you're not going to allow someone to treat you like crap. And I kind of went in with that mentality. I mean, I went in over the top, but I went in with that mentality and established it from the beginning and was like. Yeah, the first day I went in, someone tried to tell me to shut up and I poured hot water on him.
No.
And I was in a mixed one as well. I was in a boys and girls one.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was in a boys and girls one. So I just thought that asserting my dominance in that way meant that I wouldn't be picked on and that people knew you don't want to mess with me, really. Because that's just the mentality you have to have. It's either don't mess with me or be messed with.
Right.
I don't want people to mess with me.
Of course.
I didn't want that. So when I went in, that was my kind of first encounter. I got locked in my cell for 2 days. Didn't really get to engage with people. Was being fed through the cell. And then I think the first 6 months even, first 5-6 months, I really struggled in there. Like I just acted up, didn't ever want to go to education, was always angry, would get into a lot of fights. So they'd press the buzzer on me. They had this buzzer thing where when they pressed it, all of the govs would turn up. So I always used to get the buzzer pressed on me.
Wow.
They have like pointing systems, so you can have like a TV with free view and certain things. I spent 8 months of my sentence with no TV. I just literally had nothing.
And that was because of the fighting?
Because of my kind of behaviour in there.
So it was like a disciplinary kind of thing.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. So New Year's Eve, I remember hearing other people's TV, you know what I mean? And things like that. Yeah, so I didn't really... I wasn't really happy with being in there. You know, the first few days of being in there, they gave me antidepressants straight away. I was 14 years old. Then they started doping me up with antipsychotics, which were meant to be subscribed for schizophrenic people.
Right.
So
was there like a doctor in jail?
Yeah,
that was, like,
so all of the young people in there were on medication. They were all doped up. They were all like zombies.
Right, that sounds
It's
awful.
so messed up, like in that sense. So I was taking this medication not knowing that it was literally turning me into like a zombie. Like I didn't want to engage with people. I didn't want to talk with people. I didn't want to be around with people. And I just became bad. Like I just didn't want to be around nothing. And then one day I had the buzzer pressed on me. So I got angry and I barricaded myself with a table.
Right. In your cell?
Yeah, within myself. So they didn't come into my personal space. And then they tried to like ram the tables and stuff. So I hit my hand off the table and I broke it.
Oh, wow.
So I snapped this bone in my hand and they put me in my cell and I said to them, oh, I've broke my hand. Like, I need to go to the hospital. They told me that I was an attention seeker, that I was a liar. I was 14 years old. I was like, no, like, it's broken.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's broken.
Couldn't they see, like, obviously when things break,
really
it was probably
bad.
bruised or something. Yeah.
So they were like, oh, we'll put your hand in a cold water bucket, which isn't smart because the water's getting warmer. That didn't work. They basically locked me in my cell for 3 days.
With a broken hand.
That's
awful.
Refused to give me paracetamol. Gave me paracetamol the next day. And then took me to hospital like Christmas Eve, like 3 days or so after it happened. But it was that bad that now it's permanently healed. So I've got a bridge on my hand that's permanently healed compared to that one.
Right.
But like the level of neglect is bad. You know, the level of neglect that they give to young people, the fact that they don't identify that a lot of these young people are actually going through some severe mental health problems. It's quite worrying. I'm not going to lie, it's quite worrying.
I'm guessing they never said sorry about that, by
No.
the way. Like when you went to the hospital, when you said, see, look, it was broken, I bet they didn't say like, oh,
No.
sorry, or
No.
just kind of like on to the next thing, right?
It was like on to the next thing and that was it. But I knew that I'd broke it. You know, I knew that they should have took me to the hospital. And I think the only thing that actually made them take me to a hospital was I'd gone up to get my medication one morning. And every time a new inmate comes in, they do a medical on them. They have to do a medical to make sure that they know if they're all right or not. And I went up to get my medication and I saw this other person in their medical and I ran into the room and I was like to the doctor, look, this is broken, innit? This is broken. He was like, you need to go to the hospital. Like, that's really bad. And then they looked at me and they were like, you shouldn't have done that. Put me myself for another day. And it took me the next day.
So even when you're just trying to ask for medical help, they're still
then it was the next
telling
day.
you off and saying, no, you're not supposed to do that. Even though you're obviously with a broken hand.
Like there were individual staff members that I think really helped some of the young people on a personal level. You know, there was a couple of people, I won't name them, but there was a couple of people that definitely helped people and were genuine that were there. But there was a lot of people that were just there for the sake of having a job, that didn't know how to interact with young people, didn't know that they were traumatized kids that needed better support mechanisms put in place. So it was a bit of a 50-50, you know. There was some staff that was really good and they made it easier and they helped and, I don't know, they'd have real conversations with you which made you feel like you wasn't really in there. You know, we'd get to do some food stuff and cook and learn some like cooking stuff.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, you know, it kind of is what it is. Like everyone always asks, how do you survive when you go into a space? The reality is that if you close someone in a box, they have to live in a box.
Yeah.
You know,
Like,
it's
what
not
else are you
optional.
doing?
It's not optional. So, yeah.
Did you make any friends while in there? And the only reason I asked you that is because I want to know if you're still in contact with them or did they help you on your transition out maybe? So did you make any friends?
I made loads of friends.
Really?
I made loads of friends. Because I was known as coachy.
Okay.
So I used to take the boys to the gym.
Right.
And I used to go to the gym every day.
Even while inside?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a little gym in there.
Right.
I was the only female who used to access it, really. There wasn't really girls that would go there. But then there was younger boys, and I always wanted to be a PT.
Didn't know that.
So I was like, I was an athlete when I was younger. I really wanted to be a PT. So I was like, cool, I'll take everyone up. I'll train the boys, blah, blah, blah. So I'd take them every day. I'd take them to the gym religiously. We'd go up there towards the end of the night. It would help us wind down as well. And they used to call me Coachy. I used to take them up there. I used to train them. And then I stayed in touch with a couple of the boys that I'd trained, but they unfortunately went back in. Oh, no. So everyone that I actually met in there is inside now. The only two people, there's 3 people that I know that are out here. One of them who's actually a mainstream drill rapper. If you're seeing this, then you'll know who you are, bro. They went back in numerous times. And then there was 2 other females that I'm still friends with now.
And are they?
They're out.
They're out, okay.
Yeah, one of my friends, she's got a child, she's doing well, she's got her own life. We haven't met often. We've met probably 3 times in the whole time that I've been out, in 10 years or so. But we still stay in contact, you know. And then I got another friend and she's doing all right as far as I'm aware. I think the women that went inside, the girls, they did manage to, in some ways, find their feet again when coming back out. All of the male inmates that I met in there are all inside for very long stretches. Not even like a couple years, like very long stretches.
Yeah. So do you think the system, is it made to make you better or is it made to put you back inside? Like, what do you think about the system in general?
Oh, I think the system's so messed up.
Right.
That's why there's so much money being pumped into fixing it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big problem. But I think that the government like that. They monetize off of that.
They benefit off the problem.
Yeah, they benefit off the problem. You know, you have to, in some ways you need problems to have solutions that cost money.
That's
you
true.
know, I think that in some ways it is quite bad, the setup. So you almost have, for some people, more support when you go in. because you then get access to education, you get access to individuals that talk to you, you get access to a meal every day, which some people don't even think about as a basic need. You know, you have a routine, you have a shower, whether it's hot or cold or not, you have a towel to dry yourself, not a t-shirt. You know, these are things that for some people is like privileged things to have. So I think that sometimes you do end up in a bit of a vicious cycle where you come out and you end up being left in no support system, and then you kind of feel like you're running around trying to look for that support again. So then I think, the saddest thing for me was like I had a friend who maybe was about 14 at the time, and he'd gone inside for the first time, and he came out, and the first thing he said to me was, "It was so nice for someone to ask me how my day was, you know."
Wow.
I had a meal, you know. I was like, bro, like that's the reality for some people. 3 weeks later, he was back inside.
Oh, wow.
He's still inside now. Still inside now.
Wow. So
that's the reality. Like for some people, it was like actually that system works. It works having a meal every day and not paying your taxes because you don't have to, you know, having a little job, being around the same people all the time. That works for some people, but I think the system is set up to fail people. You can't give people a load of support and then throw them out into the world, and then they've got no support out in the world. They're going to end up back in that vicious cycle.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you're one person, though, who did your 11 months, was inside, came outside, and changed it all around. So what was it like when you first came out? Like, what was that? Was it like a culture shock?
I don't think people talk a lot about what it feels like to come out, to be honest. Like,
because you were just thrown back into the world again. It was like, was there support there? Was there not?
So like, I remember being in the car coming back home on the motorway because I was in Southampton. And I remember being in the motorway coming back on the car, and I literally just wanted to throw myself out of the car. And I was like, just take me back. Just take me back to what I know. That is all I know.
Was it the shock? What
was just the overwhelming feeling of being out in society, just being out in the world, to be honest with you. And it's a feeling that a lot of people feel, but they don't talk about. You know, they kind of hide it. It's like I had a welcome home party. I came to my welcome home party. There was, 20, 30 people there. It was very overwhelming. Like at first it was really nice to see people, and then it was like, oh my God, there's so much sound.
Right.
There's so much movement. I'm just so, like my hypersensitivity is just out of this roof. In the end, basically, on my welcome home party, I told everyone to go do one.
Yeah.
And I told everyone to leave.
Because there was just too much at once.
I didn't want them there.
Right.
I just didn't want them there. And then within a couple of days, it almost felt like, when you come back from holiday and you're like, I'm back here. It almost felt like that in some ways. So then within a matter of, I think it was within a matter of a week, I was basically back to what I knew, out, smoking, chilling with the people I was chilling with before. And I went straight back into it. I didn't actually stop. So I went straight back into that lifestyle when I came out. I think the point for me where it changed was when I was about 16 years old. I had an altercation within my household, which then resulted in me getting put into care. So I was 16 and I became a looked after child.
Right.
And then they had to place me in a hostel. So they placed me in a hostel in Tottenham. So I left the borough. And I was like, oh, well, I've kind of left. So that was the start to my life changing.
Do you think that was a blessing in disguise, or?
Yeah, definitely. It was a blessing in disguise. Like, I needed that. I needed to just get out of my area. Before that, I'd never even gone to the other side of the river. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone talks about South. I'd never really been to South. I don't know South like that. You know, I'm not even going to lie. Even now, I still avoid going to South like that. I'm from Hackney. Like, we don't really go to that side of the river. So for me, it was like some level an exposure to the world and how big London is and the UK is, and there's similar types of people and settings, and actually it's okay to come out of your setting and be in a different one. So yeah.
So what led you to the industry that you are currently working in today?
So I studied music production and business and was the only female out of about 59 guys across 2 classes.
Oh, wow.
I think there was a couple of females when we first started, and then they realised they're on the wrong course. So I ended up being the only the only woman on the course, on the level 3 course.
Was that motivating for you to, or was it kind of like?
I'm so used to being around boys, so I was just like, oh, it's nothing new. I think if I was a girly girl, it would have felt a bit more overwhelming. But I was just like, oh yeah, I'm with the boys again. Like, it was calm. And in some ways, it was like a space for me to challenge and explore why it was so male dominated. So I would challenge some of their jargon that they'd use and the way they'd speak about women in class or just speak about women in general. But yeah, so I think that was the spark for me. So I studied that. You know, I'll be very honest, I don't think the college thought I was going to amount to anything. And I then basically put my head down and got through it. I came out with the highest grade that I was told of the college, which was double distinction star.
Wow. That's quite an achievement.
I know. I was like, I couldn't even believe it. But do you know what worked for me? There's not one way in education for everybody. So instead of writing loads of essays and assignments, I submitted most of my work in PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
So I found the way that worked better for me. I also had a very amazing woman who she knows who she is, who I'm still connected to, who supported me whilst I was at college to just stick through. You know, she'd give me the room beside hers and I'd get to go in there and I'd finish off all my assignments and my work. Right. So when I left college, I was told that I didn't really need to come back if I didn't want to, so that it was kind of like very high grades and it looked good and whatever. So I then left college and got a apprenticeship in customer service, but the apprenticeship in customer service was in a venue. So I was like, well, my customer service would mean writing contracts, understanding TENs, like temporary event notices, doing invoices, you know, the things that is still in the events world. Yeah. I think I always thought that I'd be the biggest DJ in Ibiza. That's what I wanted to do. I started getting on the decks from like 12, 13. Okay. And then I realised very quickly, although I spent a lot of my college time just in the room DJing, I didn't want to be in that kind of environment. It felt like it was a very drugs, rock and roll.
What, DJing?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, for me, I felt like it was like that. As somebody who also doesn't drink alcohol, I was like, okay. So basically, I realised that I didn't want to be a DJ. I was like, you know what? I can DJ. If I end up broke, you're going to see me on them decks in that club. But for now, like, I don't need to do that. And I was intrigued by, like, setting up the sound system for the decks. So I was like, oh, if I teach myself how to set up the sound systems, I don't have to pay an engineer. I will be the engineer. Yeah. And then I was like, well, what does it stand on? Like, what's the still decks or the staging that they use? And then I just started getting more intrigued by live sound and production setups, like crewing and staging and stuff. Right. But there was also one teacher in the college that I was at that was a backline technician. I didn't know what a backline technician was.
Yeah, neither do I actually. Could you explain that?
So a backline technician, yeah, of course. So backline technician, backline is basically the equipment that's behind. So if it's like a band, the drum kit, the amps, they're backline. Okay. And a backline technician specifically just goes on stage, sets the band's backline up for them. Maybe you've got a loop pedal or something. They understand a little bit about tech and wires, so they know what wire to use to support you when you're bringing extra kit and all of that. So that's a backline technician. Right. And backline technicians can make a lot of money and can tour the world. Ooh. They can tour the world.
I didn't think of that. They can tour the world.
They can tour the world. You can just literally be a guitar technician and tour the world.
Really?
Yeah, you could be a backline technician.
I thought, do you know
you
why?
You could be a runner and tour the world.
And tour the world?
Yeah, and literally
but
go and
you
get
would
teas and
think
coffees.
there was like a runner or technician in every country, so they would never need one person from one country to go and, do you know what I mean? But I guess if you're with the same people, it's a bit more...
We're in a very nepotistic industry. For anyone who doesn't know what nepotism is basically when you rely and contact the people that you already have within your network. Very true. I'll call Bob's son because Bob's son, I know him.
Yeah, you know him.
Or I'll call my neighbour's son because my neighbour's son will do that for cheaper. Yeah. And the creative sector is very nepotistic in that sense. So there's a lot of older white people in power that are the gatekeepers that are really holding on to them gates. Yep. Really not trying to open them. And it's like, actually... we need to kind of break down the nepotism within the industry.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but do you think you've done that? Like you've broken that gateway, you've allowed more people into the space. And I'm going to go on to why I asked that.
I'll be honest, I downplay a lot of the stuff I do because I just kind of get on with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I don't do anything for credit. I don't do anything to get a recognition from it. I just do it because that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I think to some extent, I think I'm definitely in the works of it. Like I said, I started working in a venue. I then stayed in that venue for 4 years. I became basically the production and technical manager there.
Wow.
So I went from customer service apprentice to production and technical
manager. In a span
manager.
of how long?
For 3.5, 4 years.
Wow.
And within that time, when I became the production and technical manager, and I was also looking after 3 or 4 of their different sites as well and doing general management and all this other stuff.
Wow.
But what I'd done was I was a part of loads of music networks. I ran another organisation with a guy called Frank, which was Generation Uncovered, aimed at 18 to 30-year-olds in the creative sector. We engaged with like 2,000 young people. So there was so much different things that I was doing. I was Jeremy Corbyn's stage manager for a year.
Wow.
I just went and done so much random things to the point where this is how I always looked at it. Your network is your net worth. It's not what you got in your bank account.
Say that one more time.
Your network, for the ones at the back, your network is your net worth, okay? It's not about how much money you have and all the drip that you got on your chain. That's not even real. It's not about that.
That's not even real. We had to add that bit in.
I had to add that in. It's not real. Please stop it, okay? You got it from the market. It's cool though, but it's all right.
Not the market.
But it's about actually making sure that you're a nice person.
Absolutely.
You're real. You know, a lot of the times people call you based on personality.
100%.
One mood killer's a whole room killer. You know what I mean?
You're just coming out with the metaphors today. Yeah, you got them.
And it's like, actually, you've just got to have quite an open mindset to things and quite open to wanting to do stuff. So I was happy to make loads of teas and coffees for people. And
literally just made my tea for me.
I just made your tea. I don't think there's any problem with that. I could be at the most senior position within that production and still say, do you want a cup of tea and coffee?
Absolutely.
Because you've just always got to humble yourself. You never know where someone comes from. And actually, there's nothing wrong with treating everyone equal. Just because you're in a more senior position, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it doesn't make you senior. I think, sorry, I kind of went off on one, but I think I have paved the way to some extent. So what I do is now, should I go to that?
I mean, yeah. So let's talk about. Go on. You're working for this venue. You're at the top of your game.
Yeah.
Manager, everything. Got it going on, and then
I left.
Yeah, you venture off by yourself.
I left about 4 years into it. This was probably about 3 years ago. I left to become a freelancer.
Scary.
So it was scary.
Very scary.
Very scary. But it was good. It was like, you never grow in your comfort zone. So you have to get out of it. When you're too comfortable, something's wrong.
Yeah, true.
You really need to evaluate that if you're in that kind of situation. And I think for me, the complacency started kicking in, like doing the same things every day. It was a bit boring. Although it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
It was still the same faces, the same emails, the same boss, you know. And I think it was like, for me, it was that thing of, I've now built such a great network.
Yeah.
Let me go and see what that network's going to do for me. Like, if I've gone and worked and I've really built rapport with these people, actually, if I reach out to them, maybe they might have some work for me, whether it's the odd sound job or the project management job. You know, I've also been a youth worker for many years, whether it's some youth work. So I kind of just dove in, and then obviously COVID happened. And that was like, not the best, because just before COVID and everything happened, that's when I started looking at launching my company.
Right.
And then COVID came.
So how did COVID stop that? Did it completely put it to a halt, or did you find that you was able to do some behind the scenes things, or not really?
So when COVID hit, I thought that no live events would ever happen again.
Didn't we all?
Literally, like with the end of the world. So what I'd done was I taught myself how to use like OBS Studios, which
OBS
is like streaming. It's a streaming software. So a lot of gamers use it. I basically taught myself how to do virtual events.
Okay.
I was like, if I can learn virtual events, then I can still have a package, and then I can invest in some kit and have income.
Right.
And I just kind of started launching the idea of my company, which is Petok Productions. So I literally was just launching that, and lockdown came. So that meant that all of the events that I had booked in for the next year all got cancelled.
So you had events booked up for the whole year for a new company?
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Like I had a job in LA. I've never been to the US. It was my first ever time getting the chance to go there.
Yeah.
That fell through. I got offered a venue in New York. COVID. I got offered a venue in New York, which Jay-Z actually opened a few years ago. And I was like, what the hell, Jay-Z opened this?
Wow.
So like there was gigs, I had a really cool gig in Ibiza. They just all fell through.
Yeah.
But in some ways, that was a blessing in disguise, in the sense of it gave me more time to really think about what I wanted to do with the company.
Yeah.
And it really gave me time to think about the structure and the importance of why I'm trying to do it. What is my mission? What is the value that I actually bring to the creative sector and to the people involved in what I'm doing?
Right.
Yeah.
So you spoke about it, Petok Productions. If someone said, okay, what is Petok Productions? How would you summarize it for someone?
Okay, so Petok Productions is for women, trans and non-binary people that work behind the scenes, behind the screens and behind the lens.
Love that.
So it's basically a network, a database of amazing women, trans and non-binary people from around the world that have as little experience as 0 to 5 years to some that are 20 plus years experience. So I can provide you crew for any type of production that you're doing out there, whether that's in TV and film, live music, radio, whatever. Production is production, and we can provide crew. And when people say there isn't women, trans, non-binary people in these roles, there are.
Yeah.
I think the focus that Petok has is especially on racially minoritized people. So 80% or more of our associates actually come from racially minoritized backgrounds.
You never see that.
You never see that.
Or if you do, it's very rare.
Exactly. It's very, very rare. And I think, like I said at the beginning of all of this, is you can't be what you can't see. Representation is key. Like
Absolutely.
You have to have that representation. So I run that as Petok Productions, and then there's Petok Academy, which is a growing thing, which is the foundation side of it and where my heart really lies. And it's for training, mentoring and shadowing opportunities for young people to get into the sector. That's basically what Petok is.
Love that. So why women? It's probably like an obvious question, but why women? And why from so many backgrounds, trans, non-binary? Why?
Okay, so my first approach was initially that it would be not exclusive, but it would be for women. It would be for women that want to maybe get into audio and more kind of that technical world of stuff. As I started launching the company and looking out there, I realised that there wasn't a lot of UK, even Europe-based companies, one, being run by a woman who's not white, and two, actually supporting and championing that. There needs to be more conversations and visibility of women of colour that work in these roles. I lost my train of thought.
No, 100%. I agree with you.
And sorry, just to answer the bit about kind of trans and non-binary as well. I think for me, it's about all-inclusiveness. We come from oppressed societies. Why do we need to oppress one another even more?
Yeah.
Imagine being a Black trans woman in a wheelchair. All odds are against you.
All odds.
So why do we then need to be against those people instead of supporting them people? If I turn around and say to people, I run a company, it's for women, trans and non-binary people, just from the way people react to me, I know if they want to work with me or not. And with the greatest respect, if you don't want to work with me and you don't want to respect a human, forget about what they are, a human, we don't want to work with you.
It says a lot more about them anyway, so you wouldn't want to work with them anyway.
Exactly.
So, I mean, well done, first of all, because
Thank you.
You're paving the way for a lot of people, and you're also given a gap to a place that was never, it was never there for those people.
Exactly.
So, well done on that. I guess I want to ask you, where did your hunger come from? Because you're one person I can tell just from talking to you that you've got hunger. So do you think it has to do with what you've gone through, like your childhood, your upbringing, or like, going inside? Where does your hunger come from? And, has it built you up to the person you are today?
I think my hunger comes from proving people wrong. I think that even like my hair's cane road now. I ain't cane road my hair in like 8 years, you know. I think typically people, if you Google me now, the positive things will come up. You see my company and all of that. You Googled me a couple of years ago, be like, ex-gangbanger, blah, 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 incarcerated at 14. And it was like, actually, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
Who I was and who you was is not who you are.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to almost change my narrative and change the way people thought of me. You know, so I turned it around quite a lot. Like all of the people that almost thought that I would... So I'll give you an example. My head teacher in my secondary school permanently excluded me. And a couple of years ago, she was on the board of a meeting and they asked me to be a panel talker.
Oh God,
and the conversation was about, the topic was how exclusion affects people's lives.
Right.
And I was like, that woman thought I would be nothing, but thank you. Because I'm sitting here right now and you're paying me to sit here.
Oh,
and I'm
my
talking
gosh.
about this. And actually, it's nice to be able to be on the other side of the table for once. And when you walk into... I walked into Stoke Newton Station. I'd only ever been in the cells there. You know, then they said, oh, yeah, there was a young person and we was running a music workshop. And they were doing something and they couldn't believe that I was even there. You know, and I think it was about, for me, changing the narrative, changing the way people think of me and also think of people that come from my community. Like, we can change. We just need a bit of support, a bit of guidance, a bit of help.
Yeah.
So it feels nice. It feels nice to walk into a space. It feels nice to walk around in tracksuits and people disregard you. And then I say, hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm Pembe. And I put my little white voice on. and everybody wants to talk to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the point where doctors on the phone will be like, have you got private healthcare? That's what she asked me last week. I said, no, I'm really sorry. I do not have private
Do you actually
healthcare."
use that voice?
Yeah,
No
man.
way.
You have to. Sometimes you've got to know what you got to do to get what you got to get.
It's
yeah?
very true.
You've got to do it.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
100%.
do. And actually, that's the only thing that got me through a lot of doors. Not being what I learned.
Stereotypical, basically.
Yeah, not being stereotypical and not being what I learned, you know. Yeah, definitely. The sad reality is you do have to make yourself sound more formal.
Yeah.
You do need to come across presenting in a certain way, you know.
Until you don't.
Until you don't.
Yeah, that
That's
time will
why.
come. And I think your time has come now.
Yeah,
where you don't have to.
Yeah, I feel like this is probably the first interview where people are going to get to hear me even speak like this. Usually I'm like, yes, thank you very much for having me on your interview. Yes, it's been great. Because I don't know who's watching.
Yeah.
And actually, I had to work really hard to be respected and get to this point. Not hood respect, world respect.
Right.
You know,
Big
like
difference.
production respect. You
Yeah.
know, people don't look at me... I never used where I came from as a token to get through doors. I never said, you should hire me because I was that person that was in poverty.
Yeah.
No, I just worked hard and worked hard and worked hard and never used my past or my traumas as a token to get through doors and was like, you should hire me for what I just did.
You never play victim.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
100%.
So you can either sit around and feel sorry for yourself or you can get up and change it. You know, that's how I looked at it. So I got up and I just changed it. And for me, seeing so many people also die at such a young age, get in prison for so long at such a young age, that was a big catalyst to me wanting to change my life. My first events that I ever done in the first couple of years, I raised about 100 grand for young people who died through youth violence.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was about burying them, giving their family some money, having a chat with their mum who's had to bury their child.
Yeah.
You know, that is why I do what I do.
100%. So even now, I can tell already, but even now, having all the success, because, you know, you have gone through a lot of success, you still think about other people and you still want to give back. And even doing like a podcast today is for the youth. Do you know what I mean? So you're always giving back, right?
Yeah, always. For me, like, it's about community. You know, like, I literally got a phone call about this podcast recently, you know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, where is it going? Because I don't like to go and talk at a lot of places.
For the sake of talking.
For the sake of talking or for the sake of being exploited or for the sake of looking like the tokenistic ex-gangbanger or whatever
That's
it is.
not your story.
I don't want that. That's not my narrative. That's not who I am. So if it serves a greater purpose than me, I want to be a part of it, whether I get paid or whether I don't even get paid. That don't mean nothing to me. Sometimes people need to look beyond the money. There's other value that people and things can bring you by being a part of it. And I'm also Buddhist, so it's all about giving and back. Getting, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, you've changed your narrative, 100%. I know you said like before you go on Google, you'd see like, you know, ex-prisoner, like all that kind of stuff. And now it's, you know, your business. Anyone else out there who wants to change their narrative, what would you suggest they do?
Manifestation is an amazing thing.
So do you think you manifested this life?
To some extent, yeah. I think what you put out is what you get in. If you sit there and you're like, I'm depressed, you're really going to feel that depression, boy.
It's so true.
But if you sit there and you're like, you know what, I'm going to clean my yard today. I'm going to get up. Oh, let me just move that cup. Before you know it, you're doing it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Sometimes don't even think. Just do it. Easier said than done. Trust me, there's days where I don't want to get out of bed. There's days where all I want to do is just be at home and Netflix and binge. But the reality is that no one is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
If you want it, you will go and do it. You know, that's it. Like, I've been living alone since I was 16. Never depended on anybody. And that's the mindset that I go with. You know, the reality is that if you don't wake up and you don't show up, then you don't get it.
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Anything coming up or anything about your business you want to talk about, the floor is completely yours.
I'm talking to the camera.
You can talk to the camera. You can finally address the camera.
Okay.
Anything you want to talk about for 2 minutes, just about you, your business, where people can find you, if they're interested in like, you know, your production company, or are you allowing people to like DM you if they want to have any questions?
Yeah, definitely.
Anything you want to talk about?
Definitely.
Go ahead. You've got 2 minutes. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
Be as quick as I can. So, as I mentioned during this interview, I run Petok Productions. Petok Productions, again, is for women, trans and non-binary people that work behind the scenes, screens and lens. If you are somebody that is interested in finding out more or would be potentially interested in becoming an associate as well, then we are taking sign-ups for associates at the moment, so please do inquire. I'm also a youth worker. I run numerous youth projects throughout the year, produce them, facilitate them, and you can also check out my website for anything that, for any of my services, for anything that I've been involved in, or to just connect with me. My website is www.pembe, Pembe, Tokluhan, Tokluhan.com, and my production company is Petok Productions. That's Petok Productions. That's the same on social media. If you want to just reach out to me, if you want to have a chat, if you're a young person out there that's like 18 to 25 and you really want to get into the creative sector, you're a woman, you're trans, you're non-binary, you're even a guy maybe, I will help you if I can. You know, if you don't ask, you don't get. So please get in touch with me. DM me, email me, text me if you got my number. If you don't, I'll give you my number. And just look after yourself and love yourself. You're special. You're amazing. Remember that.
What a beautiful message to sign out with, Pembe. It's been amazing talking to you today.
Thank you so much.
I've loved learning about your story and your journey and to where you are today. It's just been amazing. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Ooh.